The topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
Hi, and welcome to Chasing Purpose. I'm your host, Kathleen Connor, and if this is your first time here today, I'm really glad you found your way in, and I hope you stay a while. If you've been here before, welcome back. We have a lot to cover today. Today, we're talking about something I see constantly in the people I work with. They know what they want. They can articulate it in every way and very clearly. They understand what needs to happen, and they still don't do it. And it's not because they lack the resources, not because they don't have time, and not because they don't know how to do it, but they don't do it because somewhere along the way, they think they need everyone's permission to want things for themselves. So this topic today is about permission, and they're always waiting for someone to give them that permission. It's like you're sitting at home waiting around for DoorDash to ring your doorbell with those permission slips. Well, I need to tell you, that's not how it works. So what I want to start with is a question. Who told you that you needed this permission and their permission to live your life? No, now really think about it. Think about who sat you down and said, before you make any decisions about your own life, you need to check with everybody. You need to make sure that you get their approval and their blessing. And you need to make sure that they agree with everything you're deciding. It's silly when you hear it that way, isn't it? But no one sat you down. No one had that conversation with you. And yet, here you are, living like that conversation took place, like those rules exist, living your choices that might require consensus and unanimous vote. Living like wanting something for yourself needs to be justified and defended and approved by everyone or a committee of people who aren't actually living your life. Where did that come from? Well, let me tell you. Let me think about the times that when you were small and everything you did involved someone else's authority. It makes sense when you're 5, 6, 7, even teenagers, that you ask, can I do this? Can I do that? Can I go here? Can I stay up late? Can I eat that? Or even, can I wear this? As a teenager and child, it makes sense that you actually need supervision. You actually need guidance. And you can't just make decisions independently because you don't have the capacity, the emotional capacity, to understand the consequences. But something happens as you grow up. The external dialogue you had as a child with your parents or that authority figure becomes internal. You stop asking out loud and start asking internally in your head. You stop waiting for your parents to tell you what's allowed and start policing yourself based on what you think everyone else wants you to do, what society would say, and what you think everybody else would think. We're so caught up in social optics that we look for authority in every place. And that authority shifts from outside to inside, but it never actually goes away. And now that you're an adult and you're fully capable of making and living your own life and decisions, fully responsible for your own future, you still are asking for permission. You're asking for it inside your head before you do anything. Can I really want this? Am I allowed to prioritize myself in this process? Is it okay if I choose this instead of that? You're waiting for someone to tell you yes. And because you're asking in your head, no one ever answers you. So you keep waiting. And here's what you need to understand. You don't need permission. You never did as an adult. Not from your parents, not from your partner, not from your boss. and certainly not from your friends or society, not from some imaginary authority that you placed in that authority. You configured this in your mind. You're an adult. This is your life. These are your choices. You don't need permission. You don't need to have anyone else give you permission. You need to give yourself that permission. And I know it sounds simple. It's agonizing trying to decide that you don't need permission from anybody but yourself. And maybe it's even obvious, but if it were actually that simple, you'd already be doing it, right? So let me talk to you about why it's so hard and what makes it so complicated. The first thing that makes it hard is we've been taught that self-sacrifice is a love language, a virtue, that it's when we're good people, we put others first, that caring about ourselves seems selfish, and that if you're not constantly accommodating everyone else's needs, you're doing something wrong. And look, I'm not saying we don't care about other people in our lives. I'm not saying to ignore anyone and everyone around you and just to do whatever you want to do. That's reckless and has no regard for the consequences. What I'm saying is that there's a difference between considering other people and requiring their permission and approval. When you consider someone else, you think about your choice and how it affects them. You factor in your decision. You're thoughtful about it, but this decision is still yours. When you require their approval or their permission for you to move, you may not actually get it, and you don't move forward until they agree. You need their blessing, and you need them to be comfortable with what you're doing. You make them responsible for their choice. These aren't the same things. You can still love someone and still make decisions that they don't like. It's okay to disappoint people. You can care about their feelings and still prioritize your own needs. You can be a good person and still choose yourself. That's important. You can be a good person and still choose yourself. But what we've been taught is otherwise. We've been taught that good people sacrifice, that good people accommodate, that good people shrink in order to make room for everyone else. And if that's what you want is something for yourself, you have to have the audacity to prioritize your own needs. Well, that's not selfish anymore. That's living. That's evidence that you are a good person and that you're doing what's right for you. You can do this. You don't have to wait. You can hope that today is the day that it'll be okay to want something for yourself and that you have your own permission to do it. But it only is today if you choose it, because no one else is going to give you permission to prioritize yourself, because they're benefiting too much from you not prioritizing yourself. The second thing that makes this hard is that we're carrying an invisible contract, one that we made, and we may not even be realizing it. At some point when we were young, we made a deal. The terms were, if I do everything right and I meet all the expectations, if I make everyone else happy, then I will be valued and worthy. I'll be loved, and then I'll matter. And you've been honoring that contract with yourself forever. You've been doing the work. You've been meeting the standards and self-sacrificing, accommodating, making everyone else comfortable. But here's the problem. The other parties never agreed to the contract. You made it up. And they're not honoring their end of it either, because they don't even know it exists. You're operating under rules that no one else is following. You're waiting for payoffs that never are coming. And when you are going to void that contract, that's when freedom comes. Because you made the contract, you can rewrite it. You need to stop living by the terms you agreed to in your head when people who never signed up for them, and you start making choices and decisions based on what that contract says instead of what you want. You can tear it up and you can throw it away, or you can rewrite it. It doesn't even have to be there. That's what this is really about. It's not getting permission from other people. It's about realizing and releasing yourself from obligation that no one asked you to take on. That contract you're following that you wrote, it means that you can tear it up. And no, I know it feels radical to hear that and to maybe even do it. It might even feel wrong. It feels like you're breaking some kind of secret rule. You're not breaking a rule. You're recognizing the rule that you made up and you're choosing not to follow it anymore because you've grown, you've evolved. The third thing that makes this hard is we've learned to use other people as shields, as excuses. Instead of saying, I don't want to do this, we say, my partner wouldn't like it. Instead of saying, this doesn't work for me, we say, my kids need me to do it this way. Instead of saying, I'm choosing something different, I say, my parents, they might disapprove. They'll be disappointed. We hide behind other people's potential reactions instead of owning our own choices. And I get why we do this, because it's safer. If the decision is about what someone else wants, we don't have to take responsibility for it. We don't have to face the possibility that we might be wrong. We don't have to do it with our own consequences and face those. But here's what happens when you do this. You give away your power. You make other people responsible for your life. And then often resentment builds for both you and them. You're not actually protecting yourself. You're avoiding responsibility. And the people you're using as shields, they didn't ask for that responsibility or that role. You put them there. And now you're both trapped in the dynamic where they're supposedly controlling your choices, even though they never actually were. And if you don't want to do something, say it, own it, take responsibility for your choice. Stop hiding behind what you think other people want and think about. Start being honest about what you want. Because here's the truth. Most of the time, you haven't even asked. You're just assuming you're protecting what you think they'd say. Based on what? Past conversations? Their general demeanor? Fear of disappointing them? You're living inside your imagination. You're overthinking perhaps their disapproval and calling it reality. And maybe they would disapprove. Maybe they would push back. Maybe they would be uncomfortable. And maybe they would even surprise you because maybe they might respect your boundary that you're setting. Maybe they'd understand and even be supportive of you. You don't know until you actually have the conversation with them, until you stop hiding behind the assumptions, the overthinking, the fear, and start being honest. And even if you think and they do disapprove, so what? Their disapproval doesn't mean you're wrong. It means they're uncomfortable with your choice, and their comfort is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to make choices that work for you in your life, not to make everyone else's comfortable, and not to make them comfortable with your choices. Now, let me talk about permission, what actually looks like in practice, because this isn't abstract, it's daily life. Permission looks like making choices without explaining yourself, without justifying, without building a case for what is okay and what you want. You want to leave the party early? So leave. You don't have to explain that you're tired or that you have an early morning the next day, or that you're not feeling well and coming up with all kinds of excuses in order to leave. You just go. You want to say no to hosting maybe a family get together that maybe Thanksgiving isn't going to work for you this year. You just say no. You don't need to provide 3 or 5 acceptable reasons and offer alternatives and make sure everyone knows you still love them. You just say, that doesn't work for me this year. Permission looks like spending your money without having to justify it, without comparing it to what you could have spent it on, without defending that purchase to anyone and yourself. If you want it and you can afford it, Go buy it. End of story. Permission looks like taking time for yourself without calling it self-care. We're treating it like medication. You're prescribing yourself something you need and want because you're on the verge perhaps of a breakdown or you just need rest. You can rest before you burn out. You can take a day off before you're sick, and you can prioritize your own needs before there ever is a crisis. You don't need an excuse. You don't need to earn it, and you don't need permission. Permission looks like changing your mind that you can pursue something else for years and decide it's not good for you anymore, that you've grown away from it or relationships or a job or an environment. You can build a life and realize that it doesn't fit. You can try something and quit if it's not working. You're not locked into it. These are not lifelong decisions that you have to stay with once you've grown. Nothing is permanent except the choice to keep pretending you don't have choices. Permission looks like disappointing people. This is a hard one. Again, permission looks like disappointing people. And when you disappoint them, you'll survive it because you will disappoint people. It's inevitable. The question is whether you just disappoint them by being yourself or pretending to be someone that you're not. One of those is sustainable. The other will destroy you. And here's what I need you to hear. Disappointing someone doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you a person with different priorities than they have. They'll survive, they'll adjust, and they'll figure it out. And if they can't, if the relationship can't withstand or withhold your boundary and making your own choices, then that relationship wasn't based on who you are. It was based on who you were when you were being compliant. And that's not a relationship worth keeping. Let me talk to you about guilt. Now, this is a heavy one because when you're starting to give yourself permission, the guilt shows up and it's heavy and it shows up immediately. You'll set a boundary and you'll feel terrible about it. You'll prioritize yourself and feel selfish. You'll make a choice for your own life and feel like you're doing something wrong. That guilt you're feeling is conditioning, and it's years of being taught that good people sacrifice, that your own needs don't matter, that everybody else's does, that wanting things for yourself is evidence that you're a failure. Guilt isn't telling you you're doing something wrong. It's telling you that you're breaking a pattern. Your brain is wired for consistency. And when you do something different from what you've always done, your brain sends an alarm. It sounds like a big signal. It tries to get you back in line. And the guilt that you're feeling isn't evidence that you're making a mistake. It's evidence you're making a change. Feel it, acknowledge it. Don't let the guilt stop you. Because on the other side of that guilt is freedom, is your choice, is movement, is growth. On the other side, that's what's yours. On the other side is the possibility of happiness, joy, satisfaction, and just being accepted by someone else and doing what's acceptable for you. The guilt will lessen, not because you stop caring about people, not because you stop believing that caring is about yourself means you're doing something wrong. It means that the fear that you know you're thinking, I'll start prioritizing myself and I'll start setting boundaries. If I start saying no to people, they're going to leave. I'm not going to end up alone. Maybe some people might leave. The people who liked you when you were accommodating, the people who benefited from you most by having no boundaries, the people who preferred the version of you that always said yes, those people might not stick around. And that's information, that's data. Because if someone can't love you when you're sacrificing yourself, they don't actually love you. They love what you do for them, the role you play for them. Real love, healthy love can handle boundaries. It can handle you prioritizing yourself. It can handle you being a whole person with needs, wants, desires, and limits. And the people who can handle that, those are your people. Those are your relationships worth investing in. You might lose some relationships when you're giving yourself permission, making choices for yourself, and you'll discover which relationships are real. And that trade is worth making. Let me also talk about people who will surprise you, because it's easy to assume everybody will react badly. It's easy to feel like this is a catastrophe and imagine the worst. Sometimes the person you're sure would never understand ends up being your biggest supporter. The person you thought would be fine with your changes might push back the hardest. You don't know until you try, until you actually make the change and see what happens. And even when people do push back, when they're uncomfortable, that doesn't necessarily mean the relationship is over. It means they're in an adjustment period. They're used to you being a certain way, and you're changing. That requires them to adjust and to how they relate to you. And adjustment is uncomfortable. Give them space to be uncomfortable. Give them time to adapt. Don't go back to the old pattern just because they're having feelings about your change. Their discomfort is exactly that. Their discomfort is theirs to manage. Your job is to hold the boundary. Now, I want to talk to you about what happens when you actually start giving yourself permission. Not just thinking about it, not just understanding and logically thinking about it, actually doing it. First, you prove to yourself you can survive it. You set a boundary. The world, your day doesn't end. The relationship doesn't implode. People adjust, they pivot. And that's proof that matters, because every time you choose yourself and survive it, you build evidence that you can do it again. The self-trust, knowing that it works. Second, you start to see yourself differently, not as someone who needs permission, as someone who gives it to yourself, not someone whose choices require a committee's approval, as someone who's capable of making decisions without needing anyone's approval, not someone who has to justify and explain and overthink their needs, as someone whose needs are valid just because they are. That shift in you is how you see yourself, and that changes everything. Third, you start building a life that's actually yours, not the life you think that you're supposed to have, not one that social and external forces think you should live, not the life that looks good to other people, not the one that checks all the boxes, not the image or role you have to sustain. Your life is yours, your life, reflecting your values, aligned with what you want, desire, and need. And I'm not going to lie to you or sugarcoat this and say it's easy. Building a life based on your own choices instead of everyone else's expectation is hard work, and hard work is hard. It requires you to know yourself, to be honest with yourself, to trust yourself, and it requires you to be tolerant of other people's discomfort, to hold your boundaries even when people push back, to disappoint people that you care about. That requires you to give up the safety of hiding behind what other people want and what other people think of you, and to start taking responsibility for what you want for your life. And that's hard. It can be uncomfortable and it feels scary. It's also the only way to actually be happy and satisfied, because you can't build a satisfying life while constantly seeking everyone else's approval. You can't build a life for other people to approve of and live it yourself. It just won't be satisfying, and it won't be yours. At some point, you'll have to choose. Do I want their approval, or do I want a life that actually feels like mine? You can't have both. Let me tell you about the timeline, because people ask me all the time, how long does this take? When will I get there? When will I feel comfortable giving myself permission? And I wish I could give a concrete answer, a date on a calendar. I wish I could say 6 months from now, 6 days from now, and everything will be different. You'll have your life. It doesn't work like that. Some things change immediately. Sure, the first time you set a boundary and survive, something shifts. You prove to yourself that you can do it. Other things take some time. You've had decades, years, and months of living for other people's approval. It's going to take time. Years of conditioning don't disappear overnight. Relationships you built on accommodating don't transform instantly. Learning to trust yourself after decades of seeking external validation is going to be ongoing work. It gets easier. It certainly does. The first time is terrifying. The 10th time may still be uncomfortable. But as you move forward, it's just what you do because it's not linear. Some days you'll feel confident and clear, and other days you'll question everything. Both are normal. Both are part of it. The question isn't whether you have the doubt. The question is whether you'll let that doubt stop you. I also want to address something I hear all the time. But what if I'm wrong? People ask me. What if I give myself permission and do something and it might be a mistake? I tell them, as I would tell anybody, then you made a mistake and you handle it. You're going to make mistakes. We all do. You're going to set a boundary that you later have to adjust. You're going to make a choice you wish you had made differently. You're going to disappoint people you didn't mean to disappoint. And that's part of being human. That's part of choices. That's part of living. The alternative isn't making no mistake. The alternative is making no choices. And that's a bigger mistake than any decision you could ever make. Because here's what I know. I can live with making this decision that turns out maybe a little bumpy. I can learn from it. I can adjust. I can make a different choice along the way. What I can't live with is not making a decision at all. Waiting, hoping, never trying. That's not living. That's just existing. That's, again, we said this before, comfortable complacency. So yes, you might be wrong for that time. You might make a mistake or a choice that doesn't work out the way that you think it should. You might take risks that don't pay off. You'll handle it, you'll learn, you'll pivot and adjust, and you'll still be better off if you've never done anything. Now, let me talk about something other people worry about. If I start prioritizing myself, if I stop accommodating everyone, aren't I just being selfish? People ask me that all the time. How can I? People will see me differently and think that I'm selfish. Let me ask you something. Who taught you that prioritization of yourself was selfish? Who taught you that caring about your own needs, wants, and desires was wrong? Who taught you that good people sacrifice and bad people have priorities? Because I'm guessing it was someone who benefited from you believing those things. Someone who benefited from you having no limits. Someone who preferred you small and accommodating. Not prioritizing yourself, but prioritizing them, their needs. They benefited from you. Prioritizing yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. You can't pour from an empty cup. You've heard that before. It's a saying that goes on and on. But have you actually internalized it? Can you actually take care of everyone else while ignoring yourself? You can do it for a while, sure. You can push through the fumes and the willpower and maybe even the caffeine, but eventually you break. And when you break, you're not helping anyone. You're not being noble or honorable. You're being selfless. You're just broken. You're taking care of yourself isn't taking away from not caring from anybody else. It's making sure you have something to give. And honestly, the people in your life don't need you being a martyr for yourself. For them, they need you to be present. They need you to be whole. They need you to actually be there instead of just going through the motions. And having you running on empty, no one wants that for anyone. You showing up as yourself, rested, fulfilled, whole, centered, is better for anyone than showing up as a shell of yourself, burnt out and resentful and barely holding on, barely holding anything together. So no, prioritizing yourself isn't selfish, it's smart. Let me ask you and address the idea that you need to earn the right to prioritize yourself, that you need to prove that you deserve it, that you need to accomplish enough or sacrifice enough to be good enough to justify caring about your own needs. You don't need to earn the right to matter. You matter, period. You matter because you exist. Your needs, wants, and desires are valid because you have them, not because you have to prove that you deserve them, not because you've earned them, not because you've sacrificed enough and given enough, just because your needs, desires, and wants exist. You don't need to justify what you want. You don't need to build a case for why it's okay. You don't need to prove that you deserve it. You're a human being and you have needs. You have wants, desires, and you have limits. And that's enough. Now I want to talk about what we're actually choosing when we give ourselves permission. We're just not choosing to set a boundary or prioritize ourselves or say no to something or someone. You're choosing a different relationship within yourself. You're choosing to trust yourself, to believe in yourself and how capable you are in making decisions, to act like your needs matter. You're choosing to be your own advocate instead of waiting for someone else to advocate for you. You're choosing to take responsibility for your own life instead of putting other people in front of you for theirs, putting them responsible for it. That's what permission really is. It's not about getting approval from others or permission from others. It's about approving of yourself. And when you start approving yourself, when you start trusting yourself, when you start treating yourself like you matter, everything changes. Your relationships change because you're not seeking outside and external validation anymore. You're not performing for approval or for a role. You're just being yourself. Your choices change because you're making them based on what works for you and not what looks good to everyone else. Your entire life system changes because you're building it on your own foundation, not on someone else's expectations. And that can sound terrifying because it means you're responsible. You can't blame anyone else if it doesn't work out. You can't hide behind other people and other people's wants. It's your choice, your life, your responsibility. It's also the only way to actually be happy, to be satisfied, the only way to build something sustainable, and the only way to live instead of just exist. Let me just tell you that living in a life that doesn't suit you anymore, it just doesn't fit. It doesn't make you bad. It means that you've grown. And with growth comes different choices. Your needs grow, your wants grow, your desires grow. Your need to be fulfilled and satisfied grows. You're not the same person that you were 20 years ago, 10 years ago, or 20 days ago. Every day we should learn something new to better ourselves, even if it's just a small percentage. So why would those things matter to anybody else if they matter to us first? So here's the thing. You have permission to want more, to ask for more, to expect more, to prioritize yourself and set boundaries, to say no without explaining, without excuses, to change your mind and to change directions, to change your life. You have permission to do that. I know this is the hardest thing. You will disappoint people. You will make people uncomfortable. When you choose yourself, it is hard to see people uncomfortable and disappointed. It is extremely difficult. That is their feelings, their disappointment, and their level of discomfort, not yours to fix, not yours to change. Let them feel through it, know through it, and grow through it. To make mistakes, to get it wrong, and to try again means you matter. You have permission, not because I'm giving it to you. You don't need my permission because you're giving it to yourself. And once you really internalize that, once you stop waiting for someone else to tell you it's okay, everything becomes possible. Your choices become yours, your life becomes yours, and you become yours. That's not selfish. That's not wrong. That's not something you need to apologize for. That's what you should have been doing all along. So stop waiting. Stop seeking approval. Stop hiding behind what you think everybody else wants. Stop living their life and start living yours. Give yourself permission and then act on it. Start right now, today. Start today. Make one choice for yourself, one boundary. Prioritize one need, one want, then do it again. Take a deep breath. Tomorrow's another day. Do it again. And the day after, and the day after that. Build the evidence that you can trust yourself. Build the muscle memory of choosing yourself. Build a life that actually is yours. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need everyone else's support. You don't need certainty. You just need to start. So start. Now, I want you to really think about what is yours, because I can talk about permissions in an abstract term all day, and it might resonate with you intellectually and logically, and you might nod along the way and said, yes, that makes sense. Then tomorrow morning, you'll wake up and do exactly what you've done for years, because knowing something logically, intellectually, is different than actually doing it. So let me give you some concrete examples of what giving yourself permission actually looks like in real life. It looks like leaving work at 5 when everyone else might be staying late. Not because you have a good reason to leave, not because you have an appointment or an emergency or some excuse that you have to say that something urgent came up that you need to do. Just because your workday ends at 5, you're leaving. That's enough. You don't need to explain. You don't apologize. You don't make sure everyone knows that you'll be available on your phone after hours. You just leave politely on your own terms. And when your boss or a coworker comments on it, when your colleagues may raise their eyebrows, you don't defend yourself. You don't build a case why it's okay for you to leave at the end of your scheduled day. You just say, I'll see you tomorrow. That's permission. It looks like when someone's calling and asks you to do something, and without even providing details or an explanation on what they're actually wanting you to do, without making sure that they know that they still love you and that you still love them, even if you're not going to do that, you just say, no, that doesn't work for me. It may work for me next week, but that doesn't work for me this week. And when that person may push back and ask for why, when she makes a comment about, well, you never want to do anything I want to do. It's not that you don't care. You certainly don't cave in and you don't explain. You don't let the guilt take over into changing your answer. You hold your boundary and say, I'll let you know when I can do that. It's just not going to work for me right now. That's permission. It looks like when someone's asking you to maybe help them with the same thing or the same problem or the same situation that they keep getting themselves into, you just say no, not because you're busy, not because you have something more important, just because you want to spend your own time doing your own thing. And you don't need to rescue them. You don't need to feel guilty about why they can't get themselves out of their own situation. You don't need to change your answer. You just say, I understand. You need help, but I'm not sure what I can provide for you at this time. That's permission. It looks like wanting to try something new, something you've never done before, and that you're probably going to be not very good at the first time. But you're going to do it anyway. You're not waiting until you're an expert at it. You've never done it before. How can you be? How can you know that you can do it or not unless you try? So you don't need to research it for 6 months. You're not gathering everybody's opinion on whether you can do it or not, or whether it's a good idea. You're just trying it because you want to. And people ask you, why are you doing that? When they question Whether it's practical, smart, or something worthwhile, you don't justify it. You don't explain it. You just say, I wanted to try it. That's permission. And it comes in a lot of ways, but more importantly, it comes from you. It's something that you just want, and you don't have to feel guilty about it. You don't have to compare yourself to anybody else when you're doing it. You don't have to justify it or over explain it, or certainly not overthink it. You don't need anybody's permission to be happy, to have your desires, needs, and wants met. You wanted it, you could do it, you did it, now you're happy for it. That's permission. And it looks like being honest with yourself instead of just hinting or hoping that someone will hear you or someone will notice. It's not dropping clues or waiting for someone to figure it out for you. It's not like you have to keep score of who's done what for whom. You're just saying, I'm doing this. I'm going to try this. I'm not going to do that anymore. Clear, simple, direct. And when others and other people don't respond the way you hope for, when they look at you suspect unknowingly, and that they don't understand or they push back, you don't take it personally. You don't make it mean something about your worth or your relationship with them. You would just accept their answer and you figure it out. You keep going and you keep choosing. That's permission. That's what happens, because you can give yourself all these examples. You can understand them. You can still might not do them. Why? What's actually stopping you? For most people, the story they're telling themselves is about what will happen if they give themselves permission, if they give themselves what they want, if they set boundaries, if they say no. Will people get angry? Will they end up being confused by things? If they make a choice, will they regret it? Will they want this? Will they look selfish? And those stories feel true. They feel like facts and they feel like predictions. Based on what? What evidence? They're not facts. They're just stories, thoughts you've been having, fears you're projecting into the future. And maybe some of them might even come true. Maybe not. Maybe someone will get angry. Someone will leave. Someone will say something they regret. And maybe they won't. Maybe they'll respect your boundary. They'll support you. They'll adapt. And everyone will be fine. You don't actually know. You're just assuming. And here's what I've learned. The stories you tell yourself about what actually happen are almost the worst cases. And they never actually happen. No catastrophe happens. We always imagine the worst possible outcome. We convince ourselves that setting one boundary will destroy the entire relationship and that no one ever will like us again. That's not going to happen. There's people we love are good people. They're not terrible people. They'll see a boundary. They'll adjust. They may get a little uncomfortable for a minute or two, and you may have to talk to them. But everything harsh, unrealistic, horrible outcome that we imagine isn't going to happen. You're going to be great. And you're realizing that you need to stop operating on fear and stop operating in your reality. And boundaries and permission are what you need to give yourself and to others. You need to set a boundary small, create self-trust, let it land, pause, let the people process your boundary. Because if you're like me, you probably haven't set them in a long time. And when you first start setting them, they don't feel very good because you don't know how to do them well. You'll get better at them every day. You'll learn to set a small one. You'll learn to breathe, give a pause, and move on. Because you're important enough to be enough and be yourself and do things that satisfy, not just keep you happy. There's different things. Happiness is not the same as satisfaction. Satisfaction, love, peace, joy, and harmony are what we're looking for. And we can only find those within ourselves. Permission involves thought. It involves consideration, and it involves being realistic about the consequences and deciding you're willing to handle them. It's not impulsive. It's not careless. It's not selfish. It's you making conscious choices about the life you want instead of reacting to everyone else's expectations. And sometimes giving yourself permission means choices that other people don't understand. Sometimes it means disappointing them. Sometimes it means dealing with some consequences that aren't yours, and you just have to realize it, that that's not mine to carry. And that you need to be an adult and be responsible for your own life, just like they need to be responsible for theirs. At first, everything will feel scary. Every boundary will feel huge. Every feeling will feel off, that you're doing something terrible. That you need to prioritize yourself without still feeling guilty for it. Your brain might freak out. Your body might react. It's okay. Just breathe through it. You're doing the right thing for yourself. And the hardest part is the beginning. That's when it all feels uncomfortable, terrifying. But if you keep going, small steps, slow and steady, the boundaries you start setting feel less scary. The guilt lessens and the fear quiets down. Not because you act differently through those boundaries or the guilt, not because they're not there. It's just evidence that you'll survive. And you know what to do. You know how to be a part of this. And every time it happens, you prove yourself that you can do it over and over again. Yeah, sure. First time hard, 10th time, maybe a little bit uncomfortable, but you'll get there slowly and surely, slow and steady. But if you keep holding back, you're holding yourself back. And that's not fair or right for you or for anybody else in your life. No one wants you to not be the person that you can be, that you have the potential to be, that you want to be. That's what you're capable of. That's what you're put here to do, to learn, to grow, to evolve. You're not the same person that you were 20 years ago. Would you want to go back 20 years ago and be that person? And just because people around you are uncomfortable with the change or acknowledging your growth or patterns that you want differently, doesn't mean that your needs, wants, and desires aren't valid. They're yours. They don't have to understand. They just have to pause through their discomfort, and they have to realize that they need to grow and respect your growth, more importantly. So pay attention to those people. Invest on relationships that need investing, because people who support you through your growth and who celebrate your boundaries, who respect your choices, those are your people. And sometimes they're not who you expect. Sometimes they're the people that you never thought would understand, and they become your biggest supporter. They're your biggest fans. They're the ones that'll come to you at the end and throughout this whole process, and be proud of what you're doing. Be proud of the decisions that you're making, because you both know that it's the right thing. And it's the most powerful thing you can do, is set yourself your own boundary and keep going, because DoorDash may deliver dinner tonight. It's not going to bring your permission slips. That's not how it works. So I leave you with this. It's okay to know that your boundaries and your decisions are going to disappoint people. Don't just continue to disappoint yourself by not choosing them, by not doing them. You'll be okay. Circumstances change. People change. You need to be okay to change for yourself. You need to be able to move through the process. So give yourself permission to live the life that you want to live. Give yourself permission to choose, to be part of the person and to be the person you want to be. Give yourself permission to choose. It's okay to give yourself permission to choose. It's great, actually. Once you get through the discomfort, and it won't last long, but just start in the beginning. Give yourself permission to choose. It's your life, your choices. You need to make them. Thanks for listening. I appreciate you today, and I'll see you next week. And until then, keep chasing purpose.